Welcome to KRWG Public Media's 2024 election coverage featuring the Doña County District Attorney race. Hello, I'm Johnny Coker. KRWG Public Media and the League of Women Voters are happy to bring you this forum. The rules for this forum are that the candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each question and should not mention their opponent in the answer. My co-moderator for this forum is Meg Irish with the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico. We welcome Democratic candidate Fernando Macias and Republican candidate Michael Cain. Let's start with our first question for Mr. Fernando Macias. So, Mr. Macias, what skills, education, and prior experience qualify you for this office?
Well, certainly a lifetime of professional commitment in this area. I'm a graduate of Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C. I've served as a county commissioner. I've been in both public and private practice of law. I was a state senator for 16 years, and during that period of time, I was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee that, of course, addressed criminal justice-related issues. I've served as county manager, so I have had the experience of oversight over hundreds of employees and hundreds of millions of dollars in budgetary-related issues. I've served as a district court judge, which gives me a unique perspective on the criminal justice system, because during that period of time, I was able to close over 10,000 cases, 80% of them dealing with adult felony-related cases. So I believe that I bring both the management, which is critical to the needs of this office, administrative perspective, and of course, the law as well.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. And now, Mr. Cain.
Yes, thank you. I have 25 years of experience as a trial attorney. I worked at the 3rd Judicial District Attorney's Office for nearly 5 years back in the early 2000s. I worked then 2 years at the New Mexico Children, Youth, and Families Department as a children's court attorney prosecuting abuse and neglect cases. I'm a former U.S. Army officer. I was a captain. I had a command of a Hawk air defense artillery battery back in the early 1990s. I had 150 personnel working directly for me with a $250 million set of equipment that I was personally signed for. I bring to this position a technical expertise of trial work, the nuances of it. We're looking at someone who's running for district attorney who needs to be able to know how an attorney needs to react in court in order to be able to train their subordinates and form a team that will be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cain, for that. All right, and on to question number 2, Meg.
Mr. Cain, if elected, what are your highest priorities?
The 2 biggest immediate priorities in that office are staffing and funding. There's supposed to be somewhere between 25 and 30 full-time attorneys in that office trying cases, and if my information is correct, there's somewhere between 6 and 8 right now. They've had horrible attempts at trying to restaff that office, and a lot of that is directly tied back into funding. Right now, they're paying some of those attorneys almost 50% over their pay grade to try to retain them because of the situations there. They're having to recruit attorneys from out of state. The office organization needs to be prioritized. That office needs to be divisionalized. There needs to be a property crimes unit. There needs to be a violent crimes unit, a DWI unit, domestic violence unit. And honestly, about a third of that office needs to be focused on nothing but doing the intakes of the cases that are coming in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cain. And Mr. Macias?
Certainly the greatest priority, because over the last decade, the successful completion and prosecution of cases has diminished, has gone down. And so what you have to do, and I agree, is the staffing of the office is absolutely critical, because out of 21 attorney positions that includes the district attorney, only 8 positions are actually prosecuting cases. And we're talking thousands of cases each year. So that's not sustainable. It isn't manageable. But my experience with the legislature, I think, is going to be a real plus for the office, because I will be able to advocate for additional budget, for additional commitments in personnel, additional commitments in the overall funding. I have years of experience recruiting individuals, basically leading, inspiring, motivating an office, that is along the most critical needs that we currently have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Macias. On to question 3, and this is for you again, Mr. Macias. What criminal justice reforms do you support, if any?
Well, certainly there have to be areas that address the issue of competency and potentially bail reform related issues. But let me suggest to you, the priority of this office, certainly for the first year, is to restructure it and focus its ability to respond to cases rather than allow the dismissal of thousands of cases each year. That is the priority. That is the overriding issue. I will work addressing broader systemic issues that would be statewide through the Association of the Association of District Attorneys. That is a unified front in front of the legislature, but I can guarantee you the issues of criminal justice reform are being studied by the Supreme Court. They're being studied by the legislative interim committees, and it's going to be a question as to which of those issues are supported or endorsed by the Association of District Attorneys.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. And now to you, Mr. Cain.
Thank you. The New Mexico Supreme Court is actually this coming week holding a forum here on campus, the Courts, Corrections, and Justice Committee, where a lot of these things are going to be discussed. Mr. Macias is correct. The competency rules are a statewide problem. One of the things that I've talked to mental health professionals about is that we probably need to start lobbying for a satellite state mental health office here in town. We don't have that resource right now. Bond reform is a New Mexico Constitution level problem that we're going to have to try to address through a constitutional amendment. Everyone agrees that walking in the door day one, any new administration is going to have to spend 6 months to a year trying to sort out the problems that are there, trying to get the office properly staffed, get it organized, and get it back into functioning condition.
Thank you for that. And now on to question 4, Meg.
Mr. Cain, what is your specific plan to address the staffing shortages in the office?
I have the ability to restaff the office. I pulled the audit from the office from 2003, 2005, and 2010, done by the AODA. And of those people that were there then, I think I'm telling you correctly, in 2003, 16 of those people were general fund funded attorneys and 8 were grant funded attorneys. They've lost every single grant in that office. I have already spoken to the former grant writer that was there back when I worked there. She's considered one of the best grant writers in the country, and she's agreed to come and write grants for us beginning day one. We're going to have to get that federal money back into the office, and that money trickles down to things, for instance, such as victims advocates for the Sheriff's Department. It funds the diversion program that they're talking about, doing the competency diversion program down in the magistrate court and all these sorts of things.
Thank you for that. And now Mr. Macias.
Money from the legislature that is sitting on billions of dollars, of additional dollars that can be applied to issues all across the state, is where we have to be looking to be able to increase the number of positions. Grant money, although certainly we should always be pursuing it, is softer money and is subject to fluctuation. And so in order to sustain the advances of the office, we have to have money from the legislature, and I think that the legislature is prepared to provide those kind of resources. But it doesn't make any sense to have new positions if you can't fill them, if you can't fill what you already have. We would be in a completely different situation if we actually had the number of attorneys that are there, 21, including the district attorney's office, including the district attorney, who would be working full time. So it really is the priority to recruit and to sustain the individuals that you bring into the office.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Macias. And on to question number 5. This is a question from the community. If elected, what will you do to balance and support gender and ethnic diversity among attorneys and staff in the DA's office?
Well, let me suggest to you that my history in terms of recruiting and bringing in personnel has been always varied. But the priority is to see who responds to you. It isn't an issue. We're in a situation where it isn't that we have an abundance of applicants with a wide variety of ethnic, gender background. It is we are not getting anyone applying for the positions. So it's almost a question of not being able to have the ability to look at a broader background of the office, although I think the office right now has a good variety of gender and ethnic breakdown. But you have to focus on who is available, who's willing to come back into the office, because it is critical to have well-experienced, well-rounded attorneys filling these positions.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. And Mr. Cain?
The priority is to staff these positions. I agree that there's not a huge pool of people to recruit from. I think our primary our prioritization needs to be on trying to fill that with competent attorneys. My experience has been that when you fill with competent attorneys, the equity matters take care of themselves. I'm not saying that every white male is going to be the only person that we hire. Anyone that walks in the door that possesses the qualifications should be given an equal opportunity to pursue a job there, and there will be no preferential treatment one way or the other. We're going to be looking for the most competent trial team we can put together.
Thank you for that. And on to question number 6, Meg.
Mr. Cain, please explain what factors you would consider when declining to prosecute a case.
Every case is fact-driven, what the facts of the case are, what attorneys call the fact pattern. And I'm intending on devoting about a third of the resources of that office towards the felony intake process. I'll have myself and at least 2 of the other senior attorneys and a senior experienced person that I've recruited potentially from Phoenix, Arizona, who will be sitting there going through with me. And we're going to pull the uniform jury instructions and we'll look, okay, here's element number 1. This is the witness and this is the piece of evidence that supports element number 1. Element number 2, same thing. By the time it comes out of the intake unit and we've gone through a preliminary hearing, we should know very well what cases are strong and which ones aren't. Because some of them aren't as strong as they're charged and some are stronger than what the police have brought to the office. So we need to be able to make that decision with the benefit of the experience of a number of people.
All right. And Mr. Macias?
Certainly, if you don't believe that you have the evidence that can successfully prosecute the case, that is one reason for backing away. Certainly another is because the victim no longer wants to go forward. The problem historically with this system is that we wait years for the successful completion of a case. And in between that time, victims disappear. They no longer want to prosecute. Domestic violence is one of those key ones that we have to bring to a successful completion quickly before there are changes in circumstances. We have to make sure that those individuals that are in custody are brought to trial as quickly as possible. This extended period of time in which to prosecute cases should be of concern to everyone in the community, because not only are defendants waiting for their time in court, but the alleged victim or the victim is waiting an unreasonable period of time to have justice in the matter that they're concerned about.
Thank you for that. And on to the next question for Mr. Macias. Do you support specialty courts and pretrial diversion programs? And if so, under what circumstances?
Well, under almost all circumstances, depending on the individual. I think that you are aware that as a district court judge, I presided over all of the specialty drug courts. The only one that I haven't presided over directly is the veterans. That was because it was created relatively recently after I had left the bench. But the adult drug court, the juvenile drug court, the family reunification drug court, I presided over all of them. Are they successful? They are successful if the individuals that are enrolled in the program aren't that far into substance abuse, alcohol or drug abuse. Those are the individuals that we have the greatest success to pull back into a contributing member of the community. I don't believe that drug courts are for everyone. I believe that obviously there are other opportunities for rehabilitation, but in a more secure environment where individuals must be participating in the process.
Thank you. And now to you, Mr. Cain.
Juvenile justice, or every court justice system, needs to have a method of dealing with cases other than taking them to trial. You have to be prepared to take them to trial, but just the sheer volume of the cases, you don't have the unlimited resources to take every single case to trial. Nor is it appropriate under justice, under notions of justice. Some people come into the system that they've made a mistake that they'll never make again. They've never been in trouble before. They made a bad decision in a bad set of circumstances. They may be taking the fall for somebody. One of the big problems that we have are the people that are coming in that are what are termed dual diagnosis. They have both a mental health problem and they're trying to self-medicate with illegal substances. Fentanyl is just running rampant in the city right now. And that's a large portion of what you're seeing with the people that are homeless. One leads to the other.
I see. All right, on to question number 8, Meg.
Mr. Cain, how would you navigate competency and pretrial detention laws in order to keep dangerous individuals off the streets?
Two different issues. I'll try to address each one in turn. Competency is going to have to be statutorily changed. That's something that all of the district attorneys need to get together, get onto the same sheet of music, go to the legislature through the AODA, and just make it abundantly clear, we want this changed. The competency rules now are so low that they keep releasing people back out into the community. I've seen the videos of someone who was arrested. Within 48 minutes, they're over on someone's front doorstep, kicking the door in and defecating inside the business. So competency is one thing that's going to have to be dealt with. Pretrial detention is a different matter, although it can have some overlap. Pretrial detention is designed to be primarily for people who are so dangerous that the court cannot assure the public safety while this person is pending trial. Under the New Mexico Constitution, there is a presumption that every person should be released on an unsecured bond unless it's a capital offense. We're going to have to go back and try to address that kind of issue statutorily in order to properly address it. We will file the necessary pretrial detention motions.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. And Mr. Macias?
It's really a question of having to sit down with magistrate judges who deal with release-related issues. At the detention center, in any given 12-month period, there are over 7,000 individuals that go into the detention center. 492, however, have gone in 3 times or more. Some of them have gone in over 40 times during a 12-month period. So some of it is being able to convince the courts that the individuals present not only a danger to others, but a danger to themselves, where they're in the street either highly intoxicated or with a needle sticking out of their arm. How can they not be a danger to themselves? The detention center has a full-time psychiatrist and behavioral health staff who could, given the time, bring many of these individuals to a level of competency, not only to respond to their charges, but to help them reform their lives as well.
And that's our time, Mr. Macias. Thank you. And we'll stick with you for question number 9. What do you think is the most effective way to deal with nonviolent offenses, such as low-level drug possession?
Well, I think that we already have addressed that in the different drug courts. Not that everyone has to go through a drug court. There's many individuals who can basically be receiving substance abuse counseling, substance abuse intervention. I believe very strongly in programs that have a level of accountability. That's the value of drug court. Either you're participating, you've made the commitment, you're trying to be successful, or you're spending time incarcerated. That is the difference. That is the model for drug courts. I believe that they can be successful. However, not enough individuals are being cycled through the programs.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Cain?
The typical attorney answer is that depends. Every case, as I said, factually dependent. Obviously, I think there ought to be a push to try to keep people out of incarceration for lower level and nonviolent offenses. These people need to be out working, earning a living, paying into Social Security, supporting their children, their families, if we can do that and ensure the safety of the community. So that needs to be a priority. The other thing is because I do criminal defense work, I'm very acutely aware of the problem of having a criminal conviction on one's record. It prevents you from going into the military. It'll prevent you from getting federal or state employment a lot of the time, and just a lot of civilian employment they won't hire based on that. The drug court, the veterans court, the mental health courts, these are all good things. They require the desire of the people who are there as defendants to want to improve themselves in order to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And on to question number 10, Meg.
Mr. Cain, how would you improve collaboration between your office and local law enforcement?
Right now, the part of the problem is systemic. The DA's office has law enforcement bring the cases in and dump them on the intake person's desk. They take them over, they go to a grand jury, and whether the case is good, bad, or in between, the case gets charged. Once the case is indicted, that starts the clock for the local rule 3-303. You can push that back by front-loading the work on the cases. And this is something I'm talking about when I talk about cooperation between law enforcement and the DA's office. If the DA makes sure that case file is complete and that the officer has brought everything to them needed to begin working that case on day one, there's going to be less friction between law enforcement and the DA's office. There's also the issue of training. The officers now are having to do their own training in their academies. They should have a senior DA teaching them the legal aspects of their job. And the third leg of that stool is there needs to be a senior district attorney on the scene of every major crime scene, not just a voice on the phone.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. On to you, Mr. Macias.
I think that not only the community, but all of our law enforcement agencies are just tired of what the situation has been. The lack of cooperation between the district attorney's office and area law enforcement. I think that everybody is ready to step up to see what things need to be done in order to try to work together and get a better outcome. Certainly the district attorney's office is reliant on law enforcement to provide the evidence of the crime. And certainly that needs to occur in a timely basis. But I believe that it's not that difficult to convey to law enforcement how critical their actions are in order to initiate successfully the prosecution of cases, their availability as witnesses, the commitment that when we are going to trial, that law enforcement is available, and so that we don't have to continue cases beyond what is reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Macias, for that answer. And question number 11, and this will be the final question of the forum. How can this office make a difference in addressing homelessness in the region it serves, Mr. Macias?
Well, again, it's a district attorney's office. Its priority is to prosecute crimes. You begin to stretch out its resources and what it does, then it doesn't do a good enough job for its main purpose. That issue, and certainly the district attorney's office should be as at the forefront in terms of groups that are there to address the issue. But that is for legislators. That is for city councilors and county commissioners to basically band together. There needs to be more housing. There needs to be flexibility in terms of who can stay in the housing and for how long. If every time that you have a relapse and you're back to using drugs and you get kicked out of your home, there's a point where we have to be realistic and flexible in terms of how we do with our unhoused population.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. And now to you, Mr.
This is a
Mr. Cain.
little bit more of a complicated question, so I'm going to go as quickly as I can.
Sure.
The Supreme Court just recently ruled in Grants Pass, Oregon versus Johnson that cities and municipalities can act reasonable regulation on homeless camping without offending the Eighth Amendment. This is something that's always been the case under the police power of local agencies and cities. We have the authority locally to do that. It's a willingness of the local legislative bodies in order to put these statutes and ordinances in place. Now, having said that, historically, nonprofit organizations have been more successful with dealing with homeless people. I'll give you a perfect example, the Gospel Rescue Mission. Their success rate with this type of person is way ahead of their counterparts in the community. So those are things that are left to legislative processes largely and the local community. The district attorney's office is to prosecute persons if they do not comply with the law.
And that concludes our Doña Ana County District Attorney Candidate Forum. We want to thank our candidates Michael Cain and Fernando Macias for joining us, and our co-moderator Meg Irish with the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico. Remember, you can stay updated with local election coverage by visiting the KRWG News Election Center at our website, krwg.org. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. From the KRWG Public Media Television Studio, I'm Johnny Coker. Thanks for joining us for the District Attorney Candidate Forum.